So, in addition to the crime report that Chainalysis produces, you also produce a global crypto adoption report. And in that report, you've identified that emerging markets such as Vietnam, India, and Ukraine are topping this list. And so those specific countries, Vietnam, India, and Ukraine, have topped the Chainalysis global crypto adoption list for 2 years in a row. So you've called this grassroots adoption. What makes one country more willing to embrace blockchain and cryptocurrencies than others? Um, yeah, I guess that's the end of my question.
Yeah, it's the what I think is probably one of the more underreported stories in crypto. A lot of media talks about Celsius bankruptcies, which is obviously an important thing, but you don't hear a lot about crypto adoption around the world. And so that's what motivates this report, because we know that you can't, kind of like different crime categories are all different. Every country is different and has
Right,
different reasons for using cryptocurrency.
right.
And you really see that when you start to tease out our data. And I do a lot of interviewing for this report, because one of the limitations to blockchain data is, hey, I see a Coinbase to Gemini transfer. I can't go, excuse me, what was the intention of this transfer? I can't. And then ideally I could. And then they would say, oh, this is a remittance payment, or this is me, sending money overseas, or sending money, buying a Tesla. I don't know. And so we can't ask the intention behind these transactions. But the geography index report was really interested in that question, and so we built a way to measure adoption by country. We weighted everything for purchasing power and population,
Hmm.
and we saw that these emerging markets were at the top of the index, and it's really for different reasons. So the Philippines, for example, really stood out as having a huge play to earn population. And people
Mhm.
are interested in DeFi and gaming. And there's a lot of web traffic activity in the Philippines from these sites. But then in
Yeah, so
India,
people in the
yeah.
Philippines they'll play games for small amounts of cryptocurrency. Well, what would be in the US, say, not worth your time. But in the Philippines, spending an hour playing these video games where you get a cryptocurrency reward is worth it because of purchasing power differences. That's kind of what happens there, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's probably why it's so popular in Philippines. And yeah, so gaming really pops out in the Philippines for those reasons, and in other regions in Central and Southern Asia as well. Gaming, especially play to earn, are popular in those countries. But in India,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
saw a ton of NFT activity, which I thought was interesting as well. Apparently, there
Hmm.
was a new cricket game that was launched in India a few months ago, or 6 months ago, or something, that just really
Mhm.
became popular.
And that's related to NFTs somehow, this cricket game.
Yeah, exactly. Trading cards, trading NFTs in India. And so there's different reasons for adoption in emerging markets. And one thing that I do think is driving a lot of the activity is um, people want to responsibly invest their money, no matter where you are. If you have disposable income, you want to put it in a way that in a place where you think it's going to grow.
Mhm.
But the problem is, you and I, we can buy stocks and we can put our money in equities, but a lot of people around the world don't have that same level of access. There's reasons
Mhm.
why they are blocked out of the financial ecosystem for
Mhm.
regulations that prevent them from gaining proper licenses for doing cross-border payments or anything. So cryptocurrency is available to anyone, and I think that that drive to invest people call it and characterize it as gambling, and and which it is to some degree, but I think that what it is even more than that is just a need, a want, and a desire to grow your wealth, and we see that a lot around the world.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So a big driver behind grassroots adoption. So, notwithstanding the specific examples you made around pay to play gaming or NFTs related to cricket, um, there's a general trend in emerging markets toward adoption because it provides people um, with a way to earn passively on their income that otherwise they might not have any access to. Is it also the case that it might also provide them with an opportunity to just exchange that otherwise they wouldn't be able to. Like there might not be other mechanisms for transferring funds between people in some countries like we have in the West, and so crypto facilitates that as well.
We definitely have seen some of that, and we talk to people, for example, in Nigeria, who just do business. They have a local shop and they do business. They use cryptocurrency. It just makes more sense to them. It allows them to have international customers, and it's just easier. It's in some ways, once you kind of get over the hump of figuring out how to download it, and and I think there's some growing places where it just kind of makes more sense. But then you'll also have places like in Argentina or Latin America. I found this more broadly, where people don't care about cryptocurrency. They literally couldn't care less about who Satoshi Nakamoto is. They're just in the presence of hyperinflation, and they
Right.
are just, how do I get exposure to the dollar? But I can't get the dollar because in Argentina, the most dollars you can hold in a single month is $200. That's regulations. So let's use stable coins. And so you see
Mhm.
people saying, hey, I actually could get exposure to the dollar in this other way.
Right. And so stable coins are pegged to a major currency like the US dollar. That's what distinguishes them from the Bitcoins are free. The pricing on them is free to move, but some stable coins, they're supposed to be pegged, and they often are.
Yeah, often, a lot of the times they're pegged. I mean, so yeah, that's right. They are pegged to a stable, secure, they're a stable source of value. So the major stablecoin is Tether, and that's pegged to the US dollar. But we are joking around because there was a recent example, something called UST, which is different from USDT, which was supposed to be pegged to the dollar as well, but
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
through this process called it was an algorithmic stablecoin, and it lost the peg and crashed to basically nothing.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I remember reading about that recently, which was actually what prompted me to say that. Yeah,
Yeah.
often, pegged. But yeah, so it sounds like some stable coins like Tether, they're they're more trusted because they tend to actually have the US dollar assets to back, that peg, whereas, I guess, as is common in any market that expands really rapidly, you end up, especially when in the bull times when the market is growing, you end up with people devising these kinds of algorithmic pegs, these kinds of scams. Maybe some of them actually thought the algorithm would work at all times. Maybe some others had a hunch that it would only work in a bull market, kind of more like a Ponzi scheme. But then, so the bear market that we've experienced in crypto in 2022 and a lot of markets has exposed some of those scams. Um, so, related to the grassroots adoption question, so we talked about some of the cases like Philippines, India, where adoption is really high, and it's thanks to grassroots adoption. But there are other instances where we've seen kind of the opposite happen. So, in El Salvador, for example, the president there he pushed Bitcoin as legal tender. My understanding is it was the first country in the world to have Bitcoin be legal tender, and that hasn't gone over extremely well. So people have taken to the streets to destroy Bitcoin ATMs, for example. So is there any kind of one thing or any short list of things that went wrong there? You know, what what should countries be doing to approach making crypto legal and be well adopted?
I think it's it shows your very typical kind of like question around top down versus bottom up, and I think
Right,
probably bottom up tends to
right,
be slightly more sustainable growth,
right.
and bottom down, you have to win the hearts of minds and people, and you kind of tend to it's more effective to do that slowly.
Hmm.
And I don't think that the experiment with El Salvador has really played out yet. Although
Right.
I think the reaction to it is definitely a resulting from this bottom down approach. And if you're someone who doesn't like cryptocurrency or thinks it's unstable, then knowing that so much of your country's assets is suddenly overnight sitting in cryptocurrency, maybe you think that's too risky. And but we'll see. I've heard other countries are following this, or might be following this example, and so we'll see how it plays out. But I think that a lot of the backlash really is because of the different approach used there.